Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. April 8th, 2024, the day of the total solar eclipse. And I will be in the Adirondacks today, making some videos up there. Hopefully catching some evidence. I don't know, maybe. They say that the solar eclipses have a strange effect on animals and magnetism and things like that. I wouldn't know. I'm not an expert, just things that I've read. So I am going to go up to where Tom Messick disappeared and see what I can get into. I'm almost wondering if I will hear another metallic sound. I don't know. I've never heard it other than once before. That's it. And it was a very gloomy, cold, eerie day. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, was about a week, maybe two, after Tom Messick disappeared. Some years later. 8 years later. So, but anyway, that's not why we are here right now. Before we get into this upload, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. Takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please share this video and leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, guys. So yesterday, I received the email from the publishing company and decided that I was going to go with them, signed the contract, and will proceed to get this book out. Like I said, the day that all happens will be the last day I ever share a Victor experience on the channel. There will be a playlist, but I will not share them anymore. I'm going to take a huge step forward by putting out his book, and in his memory, a great man, a great friend. This interview is an interview that I did with him 3 years ago, back in 2021, and he had mentioned it briefly a few times and then decided to share the whole experience. So let's get into it. All right, everybody. Tonight I have our very special guest. You've all been wondering what he's been up to and where he's been. I have Victor. Victor, hello. How are you tonight?
Hey, I'm good tonight. How's everybody out there, and how are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. It's always a pleasure having you on. I know that you're going to share a encounter with us tonight, but we are going to do another session of call-in Q&A. So yes. I'd like subscribers to email me phone numbers, and this time I'm going to kind of put a little bit of rules, I guess, not rules, but stipulation on the questions. Okay, the first is it can be Victor's a hunter. He's nothing more. He's a hunter, and that's what he does, and that's what he loves to do. He's not a scientist. He's not a ghost hunter. So questions concerning hunting these things down, what he's seen during the hunt, certain activities that they may do to avoid being hunted, yada yada. No questions about ghosts, shadow men, aliens, stuff that he can't answer. I mean, it's not fair, and it's kind of, and I'm not saying it in a rude way, but it's a waste of time because he cannot efficiently answer those questions. He can only give you what he's heard from other people or his own theory and speculation. We'd just like to have it kind of as detailed around what he knows and what he specializes in. So if you guys want to email me your phone numbers, and when you see a call with 518 area code come up on your caller ID, answer your phone, because that's me, because a lot of people sent their emails in, and we called and they didn't answer. So that was another big waste of time. But that's our plan for a little while. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this microphone over to Victor and he can share away.
Okay. What I got tonight, this was a hunt that was, I'm going to give a little backstory to it. This happened at it's called Backbone State Park. This is in Delaware County in Dundee, Iowa. And this lady, her name was Susan Shelton. She was 38 years old. Had a son, Troy, 15 years old. And a daughter, Linda, who was 11 years old. And I've got permission to use their names. One day, they was in a situation at their home. They made a break and run from an abusive situation, left with the clothes on their back, what money she had in her personal bank account, her car, and the clothes on their back, and left. Left home, left everything behind, left pictures, left everything. They took nothing. And this is where they came to. And she had found this little state park, and they had cabins, but this state park rented them for a whole year at a time. So she had made arrangements and had one rented for a whole year. The reason and another thing, she had found a job up there also that she could do and make enough money off this job to take care of them. This happened. All this started on May 28th in 2013 when she moved in the cabin. That's the day they actually moved in the cabin. In this place, this state park had picnicking, it had shelters, it had camping, it had campsites, it had 21 miles of hiking trails, it had a lake, it had swimming, boating, fishing, had a trout stream. The trout stream was fed by a spring that was Richard Spring that gave out 2,000 gallons a minute of water that fed this stream. they had a concession stand that was open on Friday afternoon, Saturdays, Sundays. And this little park was dedicated in 1920. And the Backbone State Park got its nickname, it got named after a folklore name that back in the 1920s, the folklore name for the high ridge of rocks that went around it was called the Devil's Backbone. Well, they didn't want to call the state park Devils, so they just named it Backbone. Well, they got moved into this cabin on the 28th, and on that day, the first night, she had left coolers and all sitting on the front porch, you know. And these cabins that you could rent for a year was on the furthest point back into there that any of the cabins was. And there's just 3 cabins that are rentable for an entire year. And the one she was in was the furthest back. And these coolers on her front porch that night, she had left sitting next to her front door. Well, they was tired, wore out, and they all went in there. And the mother had one bedroom, the daughter had a bedroom, and the son was going to sleep on the couch because there are only 2 bedrooms. But they was all scared to death of the dad. He was a drunk, as I understand, abusive. He hit them all, and they just got out of the situation. The kids didn't know it the day they was leaving, that they was getting out of the situation, but they was so proud to get out of the situation. But on the first night, she said that she had set these 3 coolers on the front porch that they had bought, and they had stuff in them, drinks and sandwich stuff, and had left them on the front porch. People told her that they wouldn't be bothered. Well, she goes out the next morning, and all 3 coolers have been moved. She said you could tell that they hadn't been drugged, that they had been picked up and set off the porch and opened. Said the canned goods and the cold drinks had not been messed with, but the cheeses and the meats was all gone. And she couldn't figure it out. She went down to this place is ran by the DNR. And she went down there and asked them to come up there. And they did and looked. And they couldn't figure it out. And they told her to set the coolers inside from then on. And they told her they didn't know what done it, and told her that they'd kind of drive around the loop at night and kind of keep a look on things for the next few nights. And she was okay with that. So she went out and bought some more things, put back in the coolers, and took the coolers inside. And the next day, they spent the day, her and the kids, just out about the park, stayed close to the cabin, but, got out and did some of the activities and all, swimming, hiking on a short trail right close to the cabin, and got back to the cabin and noticed this smell. Smelled like skunk, she said. And they didn't think nothing about it. They went inside, cooked up their supper, off to bed they went. And that night, nothing happened. Second night, nothing happened. Well, the next day is a Saturday. So there's lots of people coming into the state park, and they're out, kind of mingling and going around and doing things, and goes to the concession stand. And the concession stand is just overran by people. And the man that's running it offers Troy a job. And Troy accepts it as long as his mother's okay with it. And she says, well, that's fine. It was probably less than a mile from where the cabin was, 3/4 of a mile, something like that. So she lets him take the job on Saturdays and Sundays. And not on she said no to the Friday afternoons. For some reason, she said no to the Friday afternoons. So the man was okay with that. So Troy's got him a job now. He'll be working there for the summer, and as long as he wants it. So he's working everything. That Saturday, he walks home that night. Place closes at 10 when the park closes. And he walks home after they get cleaned up, and he told Mama that he smelled that smell again outside. And she called down to the office and told them. And one of the DNR comes up there and gets out, walks around, shines the light all around the cabin, smells the smell. And he finally discerns that it's just a skunk. And goes home, and she's good with that. Figures it was a skunk, thought it was a skunk. She had lived in the country as a child and had smelled skunks and thought that's what it was. Just wanted to hear it from somebody, but they'd lived in the city for the kids' entire lives, and they'd never lived out like this, and they thought it was the grandest thing, And the smell finally dissipated, and the mother found it unusual that it dissipated so quick. It got out of the air, because she knew that most of the time when something happened with a skunk, that it lasted a lot longer from childhood. Now, the next day, Sunday, they out. Troy goes to work that morning. The mother and daughter, about lunchtime, walk down to the concession stand. He's working. The man's in there working with him. They get him a hamburger from the concession stand. They decide to go on a longer trail today. So Susan and Linda's off on the other trails, walking and walking and walking. And they're doing one of the 7-mile loops. And both of them keep hearing something breaking in the brush that day, walking off, but they can't never see anything. And they both, when they got back, talked about it, and they described it as both of them thought it was large. Sorry. Thought it was large. And that afternoon, that night, when Troy got in, he mentioned that he heard something off in the woods following him home. And he said it would step on branches, and it sounded like something big, he told his mother. And she thought it was odd. Well, Monday and Tuesday roll around, and nothing happens at all. Wednesday rolls around, and the little girl said that she seen a shadow across her window that night. She said it was a big shadow. And the mother kind of just blows it off and lets everything pass. Everything settles down then for about a week. Nothing at all happens. Not a thing. No smells, no shadows, no nothing, walking in the woods. And it was following weekend. Troy's off to work, and Linda and Susan are sitting on the front porch of the cabin. It's about 9:30 at night, and they're waiting on Troy to get off, sitting on the porch waiting on him to come home. And they are looking down the road for him to come up through there, and it's about 10:15, about time for him to get home. And all of a sudden, they see him just running, just breakneck speed, as fast as he can come. And he gets up on the porch and he's just out of breath. And his mother says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "There was a man in the woods following me." And she runs inside and grabs the phone, calls down there, and tells the DNR officers they're up there just in a flash coming around both sides of the loop. And, trying to see if they can find somebody. They couldn't find nobody, and they stay out. They hunt till about 12 o'clock at night, trying to find somebody. Couldn't find nobody. And there's this smells back in the air. Everybody noticed it. There's 3 DNR officers up there. Couldn't find nothing. And finally, they just come up there and tell them that we couldn't find nothing. Couldn't find no man. Couldn't find no nothing. Said we stirred up in the skunks again, and we're sorry for that. And just yada yada yada. And they went on back down to the offices to, so 2 of them could go back to sleep, 1 of them stay on duty. Well, the next morning, they get up, and there's a dead coyote on their front porch. And don't know where it comes from. She don't call down there. She goes down there and gets one of the DNR officers and brings him up there. And his name is Ross. And don't know, brought Ross up there and showed it to him. He didn't have a clue. He could tell its neck had been broke. That's all he could tell. He said its neck's broke. And came back up there. He picked it up and apologized, done all this, said, "I'm sorry you're having all this trouble." And he said, "I promise you'll get better." And said, "We've never had this much trouble out of anything here." Said, "Don't know what's going on." And it went on and it rained the rest of the weekend. And Troy didn't work because the concession didn't open. And Tuesday rolls around, and the little girl gets up out of bed, goes and tells her mother, said, "That shadow's covering my window." Well, the mother gets out of bed and walks in there to her bedroom, and just as she gets where she can see inside her room, she sees the shadow move away from the window. Well, she does the same thing. She calls down to there again, and Ross front door. They're scared to death now because they're so far back in there. And she tells them that she's seen the shadow, that there's somebody at the little girl's window. And Ross takes his flashlight and walks around there. And Ross finds a track. Track's about 17 inches long, about 7 inches at the toes, and about 5 inches at the heel. So Ross didn't want to scare him, so he put his boot in it, wiped it out, the only track he could find. And he tells them, well, I'll keep a close watch on that. I couldn't find anything. Said I must have scared them off, that I couldn't find anything. And he knows something's there. And he goes back down to the office and he tells the other two what he's found. And they're all talking about it. And he says, it has to be a Bigfoot. He said, that's all it can be. He said, impossible to be anything else. Said it's not done any damage. Said it's not hurt nobody, but it's scaring them to death. And they said, what do we do? And they decided to leave it, just leave it go, because it's done nothing to hurt nobody or to scare nobody. Well, it is scaring them. So they decide that they will start going up around through there and just ride the roads, which won't disturb the family. And they'll start riding the roads once every hour. And they'll just ride that loop road and have their lights on and see if they can spot anything. And they decide to do it like on the odd hours. And by that, they will let everybody, if it's there, maybe that will scare it off. And they can, that way nobody will be disturbed. So they do this all through the night. That one night. Nothing happens. Nobody's disturbed. So they decide to do this. And they do this for 3 nights. And nothing happens. Nobody's disturbed. Everybody's happy. And they think they've got their problem solved. Well, on the very next night, the boy, which is a Saturday, walks to work in the morning. Everything's fine. And he walks to work, walking home from work, rather. He says he sees a big, lanky man, 7 foot tall and heavy. And he is flanking him in the woods, and he is not making any appearance to, try to hide. And that he is just following him along the road. Well, he tells his mother again. And the officers, all 3 of them, come up there again and make a big search. But this time, they do find tracks. They find a trail where he's using on the inside part of the loop road. But they never did locate him that night. And they told the mother that if it happens one more time, we'll get the sheriff involved. And if the sheriff can't take care of it, we know who to call. So the very next night, Saturday night, one of the DNR officers, unarmed, was walking with the boy from the concession stand to the home, was flanked by, seen it, watched it. It didn't make no threatening moves, but it did follow them from nearly the concession stand all the way to his house. And he talked to Troy and told him, just stay calm, I'm with you. It's not going to do anything. Just remember to stay calm. Talk the boy into, just remaining calm, not running, not doing anything. They both kept their cool, and they made it to his home. The DNR officer placed the call, got them to come up there, picked him up, and they called the sheriff's department. Sheriff's department sent 3 or 4 carloads of deputies out there, and they couldn't find nothing. He stayed there. He watched both sides of the road from the family's home. He said the only way it could have went was back towards the concession stand, because he watched both sides of the road for it to cross, and it didn't cross the road to go into deeper woods, so they figured it's still inside the loop road. And he wasn't sure where it went. So after that, they all the deputies spread out, walked down through the middle of the loop road, couldn't scare anything out. So, it had gotten into deeper woods. And they thought that, he had just seen something else. And he was sure of what he seen. So they called us. And I was sitting out there myself and was told that it was non-aggressive and that I needed to take care of the problem. Well, all that week, I hunted, and stayed inside the park and never seen just 2 or 3 tracks. And come Saturday, I stayed inside that loop while Troy walked home, and here it comes. And I had to let Troy get past me, but it was almost like it was in front of him by about 10 or 12 yards. And it came upon me, and I know that I couldn't take a shot at it with it being in front of Troy, because if it went towards Troy, I'd be shooting that away. And I stood up and let it know where I was. And I had my gun down to my side. I hadn't even raised my firearm. I didn't want it to see it, actually, because I had it straight down to my right side up against my leg. And this thing let out a holler, and that poor boy, he just went ape and started running towards his home. And this thing started running between me and him. And I thought it was going after him. But it was going at such an angle that after I thought for about 2 seconds, that I said, no, it's going to go in front of him and go into the deep woods. So I just let it go. And I let it go, and I went after the boy. And I got over to the boy before he could get home, way before he could get home. And got hold of him, got him up in my arms, and he just locked on to me like in a bear hug. And I told him he was okay, calmed him down, got him calmed down, and told him it wouldn't happen again. And that I'd take care of the problem, and he didn't have to worry about it again. And he said, I want you to promise me. I said, well, I'll promise you I'll take care of the problem. And I didn't even go try to follow it that night. I just went down there to the DNR, told them I needed to close the park next day. And I told them until I get the problem taken care of, they need to close the park. That's what I told them. And the next day, I hunted inside the park again all day. And that thing had zigzagged all over that park. From that night, it had zigzagged all over that park. And this park ain't very big. I think it covers about 40-something square miles total, which is a pretty good area. But, I mean, it's not that large of a park. And I may be wrong on how big of an area it covers. I can't really remember how big of an area it covers, but it's not that big of a park. And it had zigzagged all over this park. And when I finished hunting that day and that night, I had got outside the park and was on private property, I know, or state land. And when I got on the state land, I got to where it was going towards it was on some high ridges, on some, that had some cliffs to it, that you had to really go up and down. It was hard to go climb up and down it, but there was cave fronts on a lot of it. And I had to go down and check out them caves. And I went down and I checked out them caves. And I'm pretty sure it'd been staying in them, but it wasn't in them at the time. And I came back up and stayed on the trail. And it circled around probably, I don't know, 6-7 miles outside the park, and then it headed back into the park. And just as it got back into the park on that high ridge, where they call that, what the park had the folklore for, I found another set of caves, and it had been inside of one of them. And I think it just came out and got back up on the walking trails and was walking away from me and didn't know I was behind it. And I kept walking, trying to catch up with it. I could see it every once in a while. When the trails would get straightened up, or I could see it through the trees. And it finally slowed down or something, like there was something in front of it. I could see it turning its head and looking odd ways in front of me. And I thought, well, somebody's on that trail or something. And what it was doing, it was actually turning its head and looking back at me. What I finally figured out. And it was looking back at me, but it never did speed up its pace. It had slowed down and was looking back at me to see what I was doing. And so it knowed I was back there, and finally, on a straightaway about, I don't know, 125 foot, I knelt down and took my shot and put it right in the base of its back of its head. But it was starting to cause problems. You know, it was scaring that kid. There was other people in the campgrounds that had complained about something coming into their camps, overturning their camping stuff and other odd things, you know. So it had done some other odd things. But as far as harming anybody, it hadn't harmed anyone. But it was being a nuisance and could have got a lot worse. But that was the last Bigfoot that I killed. That was in 2016, I believe it was. No, 2013. So that wasn't the last Bigfoot I killed. 2016 is the last Bigfoot I killed. So that was that hunt. So you asleep? Yeah. Well, I guess that's the end of the show. Where you at?
Huh?
Where you at?
I was listening to the whole thing.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
I got a question. When was this like where they were camping, this cabin? Was it like a public rental thing, like state owned, rented to public, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's owned by the state of Iowa.
All right.
Yeah. I never knew anybody rented by a year, but
Yeah.
they did.
Usually cabins like that are, weekly.
Yeah, or
monthly.
even monthly.
Yeah, because we have a set of cabins up here on a small lake out in the Adirondacks. And I think you can only rent them weekly or by the weekend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, down here in Georgia, you can't rent them but by 3 weeks, and in Colorado, you can't rent them but by 6 weeks.
So, yeah, wow. Now, one thing I'm going to let everyone know is, I don't really know how, but Victor and I are putting together these stories, his hunting stories. Now, we are going to be working on the book. Hopefully, I mean, I've been thinking about it and projecting, because I don't have any more audiobooks lined up. No one's offered me one yet. But I'd like to have this, start working on it maybe in the next month or two, have it out by late spring.
Yeah, I hope to.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's very feasible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this Q&A thing, is there anything that you'd like to kind of address on that?
No, I just look forward to some good questions, and just it's an open book to the, I really like where I'm really comfortable where I'm a professional at. What I really know is the big three. And if you bring me a question about them, I can answer.
Right.
And there ain't much I can't tell you about them.
Absolutely.
I've lived them for 42 years. So that's all I've known for this length of time. And I live them day and night because I have the nightmares of them. And I won't even let when I was with my family, I was scared every night I'd wake up, something would happen, because they're that bad.
Right.
I tried, my housekeeper that's coming to me from Virginia is the only one that's ever been able to stay with me, that knows what happens, and she just stays in her room at night, and her boyfriend stays in her room with her at night, and that's the only two people that's ever been able to stay with me. And that's why I'm out here in Colorado alone again, because I can't get past these nightmares.
Right.
And I'm out here right now by myself because my housekeeper's taking care of everything in Virginia, getting everything packed and getting ready to get it shipped out here, and then they're going to come out. So right now, I'm out here alone, and it's crazy at night.
I'm sure. Especially, like when we first met and you were talking about the nightmares that you'd have.
Yeah. They're bad.
So.
They're bad.
Now, here's a quick question. Now you said 42 years.
In the core.
Right. Now, your dad, a lot of people who are new may not know, but your dad was a hunter as well.
Yes.
When did you find out what he did? Were you...
When I found out, I was probably 12 or 13 when I found out what he really done.
Okay. Did he just tell you, or was it by surprise, or?
He told me, but I think he had even told me earlier, but I didn't believe it, I think he said something like, "You'll never believe what I do if I tell you, son." I think he told me something like that. And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I hunt monsters." And I just blowed it off.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it. And then years later, I realized he was telling me the truth. And I didn't much think I would ever follow in his footsteps. But once I turned 18, you know, I wanted to do that. And he was pushing me to be just a state game warden.
Right.
So I went into the Corps, got my time in. The year he retired, I got some help and got pushed through too. So.
All right, so that right there is kind of an example of the questions we're looking for. I'm not trying to be a jerk and say, you know, so questions don't matter. But it's hard for him to answer a question that, you know, he only, you know, like with the shadow person question. You were able to answer that, but not, you know, to the extent that you would like to answer a question to.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that he doesn't want to answer these questions. He can answer the questions, you know.
Yeah,
so.
It's from hearsay.
Right.
And the scientists have told me numerous times about stuff, but that ain't first-hand knowledge. Yeah, it ain't. That kind of stuff comes from not me knowing, but from being told. You know, I can't attest to it because I don't know that.
Right.
They, you know, I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff I've been told, but that don't mean I know it.
Absolutely.
You know. You can ask me about hunts or stuff that I've learned on hunts, or their behaviors, that kind of stuff. I can tell you. I can predict them. You know?
Yeah. So.
I can just about tell you what they're going to do. Put them in a situation, I can tell you what they're going to do. I can tell you how to prepare for them. Like, you know. It just depends on what you want to know.
Right.
Yeah.
So the email is my email address, which is in the description below, nadolny.m as in michael.jeff@gmail.com. Just send your phone number, not the questions. And I'm not going to... and don't send questions if you're not going to share your phone number, because it's just going to be an open mic thing. So,
yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to say to everybody before we end tonight?
Just get out there in the wilderness, enjoy yourself. You're safe. And I wouldn't put you in no harm's way. So.
All right. Well, it's always a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to this next set of Q&A, and I think it's going to be really good. Now that we got some guidelines, it's the word I was looking for, not rules, guidelines.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Victor, and thank you for everybody who tuned in tonight. I appreciate it, and have a great night, everyone.
All right.
All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this final interview with Victor. Wow. It is a chapter that I will miss in this channel's history. I'm looking forward to the book coming out. I may do an audio book. I might. I don't know. I thought about doing it, but I don't know. I want him to be remembered the best way possible. And I think the book, and only the book, would be the best way. I don't know. I'll weigh the options, I guess, won't I? With that being said, guys, thank you for supporting the channel. Your support is truly what keeps this channel growing and going, and what makes it a place for people to want to share their experiences, theories, and ideas without ridicule or judgment, simply treated with the respect that they deserve, and it is appreciated. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and they are dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the answers, and God bless.